friends. Welcome to another video where I review a book as an excuse to eat because I'm always hungry. Before I get into that, I have some news to share. If you don't already know, The Rise River Stone is a book blogger novel of the year award semi-finalist. I don't know when the finalists are going to be announced. I'm just happy to get to this point, honestly. It was my goal just to make it past the first round, and I thank everyone so much who has read The Rise River Stone and The Pride of River Stone. Your support means the world to me. I write these books because I love the stories, and to have other people love them too is just such an honor. If you're interested in historical fantasy, you should definitely check out The Rise River Stone. It's for fans of Game of Thrones, but like on the lighter side. The Rise River Stone is certainly a story of coming of age, of triumph, rebellion, revenge. There's some enemies to lovers, and there's a lot of political intrigue. Which brings me to today's book that I'll be reviewing. It is called Obsidian. It is harsh, it is gripping, it is definitely pulls no punches, very raw writing, and the characters go through some of the most horrific things that you can think of, and the author spares no expense in describing that. So if you have some trigger warning concerns, make sure you check that out. There's a lot of Asian and Middle Eastern influence in the book. A lot of people say that they think of the Bedouins when they read it, most likely because one of the main group of characters come from the White Desert, and the people of the White Desert live in tribes. There is a leader of the tribe, all of their tribe members, and then there is a little bit of political maneuverings within some of the tribes, but then also conflict with others. So that being said, I'm going to make Lebanese mountain bread and Lebanese baba ganoush for today's delicious homage to Obsidian. So I'm going to start first with the bread, and that's going to be a multi-step endeavor. So we're starting with the first stage, which is preparing the wet base. Gross. Anyway, we're going to do a half a cup of flour to start with that. So another thing to appreciate about this book is there are a lot of characters. If you are a little intimidated by that, especially harkening back to that Game of Thrones where there's so many characters and you can't even keep up, never fear. I also have a hard time following, especially if they all seem very similar, but the author does an amazing job of distinguishing each character and giving them their own voice, describing them. And then a lot of what happens is you are introduced to these characters, but then they sort of kind of come together. It's like there's a spider web, and it's here's one person up here and there's someone up here, and then as you keep going, they all kind of trickle down into the main conflict that is going on at the base of the book, which is war. We open with one of the people of the White Desert. Her name is Zahara, and she has been captured by Prince Maradi. He is reclaiming his throne at the Black Tower, and he has her hostage because he wants the location of this really sacred place, and he's threatening to kill all of her family. But she knows, as the rest of the people know, that it is so important. It is more than just a person or a group of people. So she doesn't give it up. And he's like, well, now you're gonna have to come with me. I won't kill these people, and you're gonna have to be my wife. He has multiple wives, by the way, and this to her is the ultimate torture, is forcing her into this marriage. So that is how we begin the story. So if that gives you any indication of what's to come, there you go, forced marriage right away in the first chapter. To this half a cup, I'm going to do a teaspoon of dry yeast, and then try not to make a mess. So I'm going to talk about a couple of the characters, like a couple of the main characters. Like I said, there are a lot, and I'm going to try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but a couple of the needs to know, I'll kind of talk to you about that. To this, I'm going to add a teaspoon of white castor sugar, and I had to look this up because I did not know what that was. It is not very common here in the United States. It's basically like a very finely ground sugar. You can substitute it with granulated sugar, or I think they said Baker's, but I just use my nice mortar and pestle and I ground up some granulated sugar. It's not as fine as confectioner's sugar if you're doing it on your own. And then I'm going to add to that 3/4 of a cup of warm water. All right, the first character I'm going to tell you guys about is, and I am so sorry if I butcher these names, first of all, Jari, D-J-A-R-I, and I probably screwed that up. But anyway, she's 15 years old. She lives in the White Desert. Her tribe's leader, her father, is very powerful, and her brother, Nazir, is an oracle, which is incredibly rare. Also, these people are described as having silver hair and like yellow amber eyes, which I thought was really cool. But her brother has visions of the future, and sometimes it's a horrible burden for him. I mean, I can't even imagine meeting somebody and seeing your future and have it be horrible, but you can't say anything because, you know, timey-wimey or whatever. Jari is young, she's 15, and she knows that her role, like so many other women, is going to be a political pawn. She knows she's going to have to do her duty. She's going to be married off. She's going to, you know, have to be a part of an alliance with another tribe. That's where she's coming from. She does love her brother. She loves her father. Maybe a little bit resentful for what she's going to have to do with her life. Okay, so this is all stirred up, and now this is going to sit and get bubbly, and that's going to take an hour. You know how patient I am. Okay, it's been an hour. It's all like foamy and active. So next we're going to add a tablespoon of olive oil. I mentioned earlier Zahara and Marathi. The book kind of opens up with them, and then I think it's like 18 years that go by. So they are in the Black Tower, and Zahara is still a captive and still regards herself as a captive. Some authors might do a little bit of a Beauty and the Beast action and have her falling in love with him, have her a little Stockholm syndrome, but not our girl. She's like, I'm still trying to figure out how to get myself out of this situation. They do have a son, Prince Lasura. He's definitely tries to stay low on everybody's radar, and Marathi clearly favors Zahara and Lasura, even though Lasura is not the firstborn, and even though Zahara is technically their enemy, their people's enemy. And so his advisor's like, bro, you gotta stop playing favoritism. Even though he never really admits it, I mean, we clearly know he's got some affection for these people. I'm adding a half a teaspoon of salt dangerously over the top of this, like my husband hates when I do. And then I'm gonna do a cup of the all-purpose flour and mix that together. I really appreciate that the author really develops not only the male character's motivations, but the female character's motivations, because here are these other wives of Marathis being like, this chick is our enemy and you clearly care more for her than us. And so they're trying to also weave their way through this, you know, the political web. And then, of course, in the periphery, we have Zahara, who's trying to figure out her way out of this situation. Her ultimate goal is to kill her husband, you know, so she kind of has to play the game. It's just like a little ball of sticky dough. I'm going to work the dough until it becomes like a dough that I could work with. It needs to be just right. So that's what we have going on in the Black Tower. It's a lot to unpack, especially for the young prince who's from these two different worlds, and you're just trying to get by without people wanting to kill you because of who your mom is. Speaking of people who've been taken from their people and having to be slave and horrible things happen to them, we have Hashim. Now, he is from the White Desert, but unfortunately, he is basically human trafficked into the Black Tower, and he quickly learns that he needs to do whatever he needs to do to survive, and sometimes that means prostituting himself. But he does it very smartly. He uses it to glean a lot of information about people in the tower. He uses it to be able to kind of not really form alliances, but form relationships that will benefit him. One of those relationships is with Dio di Amari. And again, I'm sorry if I just butchered that, but this guy, this is my favorite type of character. He's that scoundrel, jack of all trades, knows everybody, kind of a dude who you do not mess with because he could probably kill you with a pinky finger. And he has this group of assassins, and he enlists Hashim, and Hashim quickly becomes his Silver Sparrow, his most deadly assassin. I kind of coated in a little bit of olive oil to keep it moist. I'm going to let it sit on the counter for about 60-90 minutes. I'll just reiterate that Dio is one of my favorite characters, and nothing he does is without purpose. In the spider web, he probably like skitters around most of the threads, and he's usually like 10 steps ahead. So when he sends Hashim into the world, he clearly has a reason for it. And then Hashim's story ends up converging with Jari's. So finds himself in a situation, and then he becomes her sworn sword. So basically like her protector. And this is also kind of puppet mastered from Nazir's side. So there's a lot of little tendrils happening. And again, I'm not going to give away too much of like the circumstances surrounding the things that happen, but just so you know, Hashim and Jari's story come together. They end up becoming quite close as well, with the understanding that she knows literally nothing about him. He knows that he has no chance in that sphere because of who she is. While our dough is rising for the next 90 minutes, I'm going to get started on the baba ganoush. And I've never had this before, so I'm really excited because you know how I like to dive into things I've never done before in front of other people and try not to mess them up. We're going to start by preheating the oven. It's at 400 degrees. And then we're going to get a large eggplant. And I discovered that my idea of a large eggplant and Fred Meyer's idea of a large eggplant are very different. But hey, at least I got girth. I'm going to take this bad boy, I'm going to wrap it in aluminum foil and roast for 45 to 60 minutes. Basically want to make sure that the skin is falling off. It's nice and soft. I can poke it with a fork. Not a fork. Okay, my eggplant ended up roasting for an hour. And then I let it sit for 10 minutes so that it would be cool enough for me to actually work with and give myself second-degree burns. Each character can be a little shady, which is kind of cool. There's nobody who's inherently good. There's nobody who's inherently bad. Gotta love that morally gray. And even the ladies, they are badasses. Even when they go through something horrifically traumatic, they don't just fall over and willow away. They stand up and they fight. And that's basically at the core of this book. You know, not just the big one between the Black Tower and the White Desert, but there's a war amongst different tribes. There's a war within each character. What I really like about this book is the sneaky attacks. Like, you think you know what's going on, and the author's like, no, you don't. You don't know what's happening. You don't know who this person is. This is a first book in a series, so there's definitely that build-up of letting you know who everybody is, kind of getting their backstories going, but not in a info dump type of way. There's a lot of world building. I'm going to get this finished peeling up, and then I'll be right back to tell you the next step. And I got my trusty food processor here. For those of you who've been following, you know that me and this food processor have been through some things, and no, I haven't gotten a new one. So I'm going to put the pieces in the food processor. Hopefully it will fit. Like I said, this isn't a large eggplant, but she's a girthy one. I'm going to add 2 garlic cloves. It says 3 to 4 tablespoons of lemon juice. And then I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of tahini sesame paste. My timer just went off for the bread. A 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Pulse this until they're incorporated, but it still needs to look chunky. It's definitely still chunky. And at this stage, the recipe says you can let it rise overnight if you really want to. And I'm sure it tastes amazing, but I'm hungry, so I'm not going to do that. So I have my dough. And I'm going to flour surface and roll it out here. What it wants me to do is divide it into 8 pieces. And I'm notoriously horrible about evenly dividing up my dough. So I think I'm just gonna do what I always do, which is wing it. And we're gonna roll them out so that they're very thin, like a millimeter thick. I don't have a flat pan, so they're gonna go in my cast iron skillet. Oh, how thin is a millimeter? It's like, it's almost like a little pizza dough. Been 2 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and flip it. You can see it's kind of getting a little steamy down there. Brown spot, kind of looks like it had like little tortillas. So I'm gonna get all of these hopefully cooked. I'm on my last bread. I'm about to flip it, and hopefully I didn't burn it. I did have to turn down the heat on my cast iron skillet. So the rest of the bread's not supposed to get brown, but these little bubbly spots, it's a-okay. And let me tell you, this has been a journey. Though they are over there. I've come through this as a different person. I have my baba ganoush, which I have drizzled with a little bit of olive oil. And then I've got my mountain bread. It smells really good. I'm really excited to dig into this. I'm just gonna get a piece of this little bad boy here. So let's find out how she goes here. That's yummy. Excuse me while I just sit here and eat bread. That's delicious. And I don't really want to share. I've got like kids and stuff. Maybe they won't like it. Once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking chances on indie authors. Obsidian, it's dark, it's gritty, it's raw. It definitely delves into the human condition on a very visceral level. So if you're really into the darker side of Game of Thrones, politics, world building, characters that go through all of the trauma, then please check out Obsidian. Book 2, I'm not sure when it's coming out, but I'm definitely going to read it, because you can't end a book the way the author did and not expect me to. I just wish I could spoil it for you, because it was pretty epic. But I won't, because I want you to go read it yourself. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Thank you.